The measure passes. Moving now to file item 54, AB 1448. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1448 by Assemblymember Lopez, enacting to real property.
Assemblymember Lopez, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I present AB 1448. This bill will allow the Californians to hang in the clothes on dry racks, clothesline, and similar devices. Utility rates have increased, and residents are looking at different ways to save money and less energy. Hanging laundry in the sun is the oldest way fashion to save energy. This bill does not allow the tenants to damage the property and allow the landlord to have approval. Hanging clotheslines, all the opposition has been removed, and this bill is proudly supported by Utility Reform Network. Thank you, members.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 47, no 17. The measure passes. We're going to pass and retain file items 55, 56, and 57. File item 58, AB 816. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 816 by Assemblymember Bonta and others, enacting to cooperative corporations.
Mr. Bonta, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I'm pleased to present AB 816, which will advance the creation of new small businesses, create jobs, and empower California communities by creating a clear pathway for worker-owned businesses to incorporate. While the incomes of the top earners have surged in California since the Great Recession, working people in California still have not fully recovered. In my own district, especially, residents are struggling and have not completely recovered from the recession. The development of worker-owned businesses is central to a full economic recovery and to closing the income inequality gap. There is no known organizational opposition to this bill. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 50, no 17. The measure passes. We're going to pass and retain file item 59, file item 60, AB 57. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 57 by Assemblymember Quirk, enacting to telecommunications.
Mr. Quirk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Speaker and members. Assembly Bill 57 would provide that if a local jurisdiction fails to either approve or deny a siting application within the existing time frame set forth by the Federal Communications Commission, that the application shall be deemed approved. In 1996, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act, which provides a local jurisdiction to act on a wireless facility permit within a reasonable period of time. Then in 2009, the FCC issued a declaratory ruling that a reasonable period of time is 3 months to process an application at an existing site and 5 months to process applications at a new site. However, many local jurisdictions still fail to adhere to the federally required timeline. In such cases, the wireless provider's only option is to sue the city or county to have the permit acted on in the approved time frame. Needless to say, businesses are reluctant to sue a jurisdiction that has power over a needed permit. Such delay has implications for public safety, economic growth, and the ability of many individuals to access the Internet. Member, this bill simply enforces the existing FCC timeline, which is a modest step to ensure that California has the necessary telecommunications infrastructure to provide services to its citizens and to compete on a national and global scale.
Mr. Harper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this measure. More and more people are using their wireless devices, such as tablets, smartphones, laptops, to work and communicate. Wireless data users are like the traffic on our freeways. The more people that use bandwidth, the slower the bandwidth gets for the rest of us. This bill allows telecommunications companies to update their facilities to handle the increasing traffic in a reasonable amount of time. Clouds that hold data are just as important as the clouds that hold water for the state of California. AB 57 will allow telecommunications companies to upgrade areas with low or no coverage so that connections aren't lost when we are traveling. This bill cuts through the red tape at the local levels and allows telecommunications companies to upgrade their service in a reasonable amount of time. AB 57 will allow California to grow economically by letting telecommunications companies to invest building more wireless facilities in our state. I would urge all of my colleagues an aye vote.
Dr. Wood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of my seatmate and colleague from the Bay Area. I represent a very large and rural district where telecommunications infrastructure is very, very challenged. So I support what he's trying to do here. We need greater opportunities for connectivity in our communities, and whether it's wireless or broadband infrastructure, we need to look at a variety of modalities to get this done and help in our area. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I also rise in support as Vice Chair of Utility and Commerce and working with the author through that committee in times past. I really appreciate him bringing it forward, number one. Number two, 8 years as mayor of the city of Fresno during really an explosive time for the construction of this kind of technology, to have the certainty and to be able to present that certainty to those willing to invest in our communities is very, very important. It strikes a very good balance between local government oversight and the opportunity to quickly and in a way to make these decisions predictable so that the investments flow more quickly. So I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also rise in support of AB 57. Since 70% of 911 calls are wireless, a strong, robust wireless network with adequate coverage and capacity are key to having a well-functioning 911 system. My Select Committee on Local Emergency Preparedness is currently working with the wireless industry, the Office of Emergency Services, and first responders on improvements to the 911 system. Those improvements will in large part depend on the new technologies that will require more capacity for advanced wireless data services, which will in turn require more wireless infrastructure. I also ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Cooley, you're recognized.
Colleagues, I rise in support of this bill. Very interesting bill. It relates to a fundamental part of contemporary commerce, the internet, being connected. In my city of Rancho Cordova, we are a former Air Force base. We were a B-52 bomber base. This base was closed in the 1990s. Very hard hit. It hurt the community tremendously to lose this base. But there was a silver lining. Because it was an Air Force base in the 1990s, we had state-of-the-art fiber optics that went in and out of that Air Force base, and that technological capacity for communication became the backbone on which we regrew thousands of jobs in Rancho Cordova. So here we are taking what is the new platform for business, the internet, and expanding its reach, its access, supporting the growth of jobs. It's a tremendous bill. I thank my colleague for bringing this forward.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Quirk, you may close.
I thank all my colleagues for their comments. I respectfully request your aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 63, noes 4. The measure passes. We're going to pass and retain file item 61 through 64. File item 65, AB 547. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 547 by Assemblyman Gonzalez and others, enacting to elections.
Assemblymember Gonzalez, you may open.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 547 is a bill to increase voter turnout and cut costs in San Diego County special elections by extending the primarily mail ballot special election pilot program created by AB 1873, a bill that was signed into law last year. More specifically, AB 547 will offer cities, counties, school districts, and special districts within San Diego County the opportunity to opt in to the pilot program and conduct a predominantly mail ballot special election. All vote-by-mail voters have demonstrated that they are up to 5 times more likely to participate in a special election than voters who don't receive a ballot in their mail. What is more, pilot projects have already found significant cost savings from conducting predominantly vote-by-mail special elections. This bill is sponsored by the County of San Diego and is supported by the county's registrar of voters and has no registered opposition. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Assemblymember Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in strong support of AB 547. Last year I co-authored AB 1873, which authorized the San Diego pilot program for hybrid elections where everyone gets a ballot in the mail and precincts are consolidated to vote centers. AB 547 is an important follow-up to that bill as it extends the pilot program to other local elections so we can get more comprehensive data. Turnout, as you know, is often particularly low in these special elections, and research shows that when voters are actually mailed ballots, they are made aware that an election is taking place and as a result are more likely to vote. It's critical we do everything possible to enhance turnout so our government better reflects the will of the people. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Assemblymember Ridley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of AB 547. I want to thank the author for working with the committee on. Oh, there you go. Thank you for working with the Committee on Elections and Redistricting to make sure that this is a strong proposal. We hope to see success in increasing turnout in San Diego County, and we know this is a growing trend among the preference for vote by mail, and we want to see that the protections in election integrity are of the utmost care, and we think that this bill is a responsible way in doing so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I rise in opposition to File 65, AB 547. Very simply, the Bipartisan National Commission on Federal Election Reform has specifically recommended against all-mail elections in any situation, noting that the growing use of absentee voting has turned this area of voting into the most likely opportunity for election fraud, now encountered by law enforcement officials. These cases are especially difficult to prosecute since the misuse of a voter's ballot or the pressure on voters occurs away from the polling place or other outside scrutiny. To quote our former governor, Gray Davis, who in 1999 vetoed a similar bill to allow counties to conduct all-mail elections, he said, "Many counties do not aggressively purge their voter file or duplicate names deceased voters or voters who have moved, thus creating an opportunity for increased error or fraud. Without such safeguards in place, I believe legislation allowing all-mail ballot elections on a statewide basis is premature." Members, I would contend to you that in the last 16 years we've made great strides in purging our voter rolls, but they are by no means completely purged of all the bad voter records. All vote by mail ballot elections, whether they benefit either party or one agency, one jurisdiction over another, they're bad. They're ripe for fraud. I urge you to vote no on this pilot program and on all future bills that have an all-vote-by-mail component to them. Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Assemblymember Gonzalez, you may close.
Just as a clarification, this pilot program is different than other all vote-by-mail programs that we've seen. It, in fact, allows for drop-off centers, weekend voting prior to the election, and voting centers throughout the district the day of election where you can show up and vote. So to call it all-mail voting would be disingenuous. Primarily mail voting, every voter will get a vote-by-mail envelope in their hand and be able to utilize those 30 days before an election to actually cast their ballot. And anyone who has sat at a register of voters office while they're validating signatures on those envelopes, you can know that unless somebody is a handwriting expert, it is extremely hard to get envelopes validated with signatures that are not the original signature that's on the voter registration file. It is easy to say there will be fraud, but there's been no circumstances to suggest that. And quite frankly, this was brought to me and supported by my Republican Board of Supervisors in San Diego County, of which they support this and have promoted this program. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 20. The measure passes. We're going to pass and retain file item 66 and 67. File item 68, AB 1077. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1077 by Senator Holden, enacting to mutual water companies.
Mr. Holden, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I thank you for allowing me to present Assembly Bill 1077. This measure will provide greater flexibility and transparency for mutual water companies to provide customers and shareholders better access to board meetings. Because of their size, these companies do not have the large boardrooms or public meeting spaces frequently used by city councils and special districts. At the same time, these constraints should not deter participation in critical board decisions. Using the growing availability of free, easy, and user-friendly conference call technology, AB 1077 enables mutual water companies to continue reform and to be more open and transparent. This bill is simple, cost-effective measure that boosts public participation and has no known opposition. This measure received unanimous support in Policy Committee, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 72, noes 0. The measure passes. Going now to file item 69, AB 1199. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1191 by Senator Nazarian, enacting to land use.
Mr. Nazarian, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and fellow members. AB 1191 clarifies that the interest generated on a Quimby fee is part of the Quimby Fund itself and may be used for park development as specified by the State Quimby Act. This bill holds harmless any locality who has implemented this practice. Currently, state law does not explicitly grant cities the statutory authority to use interest generated from Quimby fees. Clarification in state law is needed to provide local governments guidance on the correct use interest on fees and to give clarity to local governments who exercise caution in using dormant Quimby funds to develop outdoor space. Excuse me. It is vital that we continue to empower local governments to fund projects to create more open space. This bill will ensure that the interest revenue generated off of Quimby fees is appropriately utilized for this public benefit. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 72, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 70, AB 1290. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1290 by Senator Daly, enacting to healthcare districts and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Assemblymember Daly, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1290 is a district bill. It will allow us to do a design build on a hospital. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 70, noes 0. Measure passes. On the urgency. I'm sorry. Ayes 70, noes 0 on the bill itself. File item 71 will pass and retain. File item 72, AB 1363. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1363 by Senator Salas, enacting to animals.
Assemblymember Salas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I present before you AB 1363, which expands the definition of a stray to include all livestock. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 72, noes 0. The measure passes. Colleagues, at this point, I'd like to go back to guest introductions and recognize Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier, members, I introduced people who actually weren't here. But they're here now, so let me reintroduce them to you. I want to introduce the students from Fairwood Explorer Elementary School in my district. They're here with their teachers and parents to have a tour of the Capitol today, so please welcome the students from Sunnyvale, California.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Going back to the daily file items 73 and 74, we will pass and retain. File item 75, AB 1101, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1101 by Assemblymember Bonilla, enacting to pupil and school enrollment.
Assemblymember Bonilla, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. Assembly Bill 1101 provides critical safeguards for students, families, and school districts. Basically, if there's going to be an investigation around student residency, this bill says that we want school boards to actually adopt a policy. It isn't enough for families not to know if they're being investigated or how they're being investigated. And so it establishes a school board policy must be adopted. It says that surreptitious photographing by private investigators should not take place. And it allows for an appeal process by a family on the residency issue. I believe this is a bill that increases transparency. It's something that it can be decided at the local level, but it does protect our students from people coming up misrepresenting themselves as they're doing the investigation. And we have cases where that has happened, where in order to find out if they're in the district or not, we've had private investigators who actually pretend they're somebody else, and they're not even identifying the fact that they're asking for the purpose of residency. And so this bill, I think, is very good for our families and our local school districts, and I do ask for your aye vote.
Assemblymember Baker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank our good colleague for authoring this bill. It is transparent, it does provide local control, and it protects our kids in a way that's reasonable for our school districts. I think a responsiveness to the needs in our communities for this bill, and I urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion, Assemblymember Bonilla, you may close.
I do ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 71, no 0. The measure passes. File item 76, AB 1185. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1185 by Assemblymember Ridley Thomas, enacting to best value procurement.
Assemblymember Ridley Thomas, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise to present AB 1185, which would allow the Los Angeles Unified School District to establish a 5-year pilot program to authorize the district to select contractors for projects over $1 million based on the best combination of price and qualifications, otherwise known as the best value procurement method. This program is modeled at the University of California's program, and I would respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 23. The measure passes.